Marshall in the middle.
274. I got Glenn Ferguson with me all the way. What country are you in, man?
Scotland currently.
Scotland. Oh my gosh. That's like all the way on the other side of the world.
I know, they're like Yankees.
So
They're like real Yankees. No one says please, excuse me, or thank you here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
There are some.
wow.
If you were ever to visit, like, I don't know, like New York or Connecticut, yeah, it's like that here.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. That's interesting. What? How did you end up? In Scotland? How did that work out?
Well, I had just retired, and my wife's Scottish, so we migrated over here.
I love it. That's great. That's great. Thanks for your service. So you were in the 82nd, weren't you an Army Ranger and then Foreign Legion, French Foreign Legion? Is that right? Do I have it down right?
No, I was never in Ranger Battalion.
Okay.
So I was 18th Airborne Corps. I was in 82nd, but before that I was in the Foreign Legion.
Oh, before you were in the Foreign Legion.
So I joined the Foreign Legion straight out of high school. So it would have been 1988. I was like 18 years old. And you're old like me, so you can remember what military service was in the 80s and how we were an army at peacetime. Right? So I was afraid if I ever joined the U.S. forces that I would not see a shot fired in anger, because obviously in the 80s, everybody was poking a stick at the U.S., but no one was firing back.
Right.
Because you got to think it was the coal, and then it was the embassy, it was the Beirut, and then it was USS Cole. I think in the 80s they got hit.
Yep.
So, and I think the only thing that happened in the 80s is that Reagan killed, what's his name's kids over in Beirut, right? Over in Lebanon.
You're right. Gaddafi.
Yeah, he killed Gaddafi's kids in Lebanon, I think, or no, in Beirut. That would have been somewhere late 80s.
Yeah. And so, like, I mean, you don't go down to the corner store, at the mall and sign up to be in the French Foreign Legion. You were in Alabama, right?
No, actually, I was in Georgia. I was living with my father. And
okay.
So we keep cutting out. Is your connection okay? Or is it just loading wrong? It's just loading slow.
Yeah, so it's showing me that my connection is unstable here and there, and it's showing me that yours is unstable here and there. I think it's just a combination of just messy mess. I will tell you this, that your sound is coming through good, so I know that we'll be all right. Just keep going, and we'll be fine.
All right, so I was living with my father. Because it's like, for example, I have brothers and sisters, but they were raised by Cheryl, and then I was raised by my father. So, and so I went to France. I went to selection. They have like a selection prep phase. Passed selection, and then I went off to basic training. And then roughly 9 months after I signed up, I was in regiment. My first regiment, like most everyone, you're trained as an infantryman. But my first assignment, I was a cavalry scout. And then when I was in the cavalry regiment, we went off to the first Gulf War. And that is where since I was American in the regiment, I was a junior NCO. And so I was liaison between our regiment and 82nd. So I cross-trained like weapons and things like that, NCOs from 82nd. Can't remember which brigade they were from, because obviously that was like 30 odd years ago. And then after the Gulf, I was transferred over to the infantry regiment, where I served in a heavy weapon platoon. And then, so that would have been, December of 93, I got out of the Legion. and tried my hand at being a civilian, and it lasted all of 5 months because I can't stand civilians. So being regimented, that's what I call in the Legion, because obviously everything's like, it's old draconian discipline and old wall-to-wall counseling. It was quite brutal. So I went back in the U.S. Army. Had to go back to basic. I was a 13 Fox. And then when I was in basic training at SIL, so I left Legion in December of 93, May of 94, I was back in the U.S. Army, and then I was at SIL. And then, strangely enough, one of my drill sergeants, this guy named Staff Sergeant Million, Drill Sergeant Million, he was one of the NCOs that I trained out in the Gulf during the first Gulf War, and he's like, "Hey, man, I know you." So I could do no wrong. And then there you go. And then so I did all my time. My first assignment, it was 18th Airborne Corps, and I got shipped down to Fort Stewart. And then I was put down into 1st Brigade Recon, so their first BRT as a Colt. And then I got shipped off to Germany. I was in their BRT, so I was in the Colts as well. So that's the combat observation laser teams. And then after that, I got shipped off to Bragg, and then I got out.
Oh, wow. That's all kinds of crazy. So you got to tell me, dude, you're sitting in Georgia, minding your own business. I'm going to go join the French Foreign Legion. Let me just fly over to France and sign up. Do you even speak French or at that time? I mean, you walk up there and they call you to attention, and do you even know what they're saying?
So let's talk about it. So I had an uncle that was a Nom. So the Ferguson family, my side, my father's side of the family, I think we've hit every war since 1776. So every single able-bodied male has fought. We fought the Civil War or the Independence. We fought in the War of 1812. We fought in the Civil War. In fact, in the Civil War, there was 4 generations of Fergusons were fighting, but they were all in different units. So it would be like my great-great-grandpa, his son, and then his son, and then his son. So it was like nearly a 70-year-old man down to like a 19-year-old man, all fighting from the same family.
Oh, wow.
And then it was after that, then we did World War One. So with my great grandpa, he was World War One. Grandpa did World War Two. But the thing was that all my grandpa died. My great grandpa from World War One, he died when my grandpa was 6, and then my grandfather, so my father's father, died when he was about 6. So when Vietnam came up, my dad was exempt service, so he's the only Ferguson that's never hit combat. So, but he had a cousin from my Uncle Gordon. He was a Nom, and then my Uncle Gordon used to tell me stories that when he was a Nom in the early 60s, that there were some still foreign legionnaires romping around in the area. Now, of course, you hear all those stories. So, and then when I was about 18, I thought, well, hell, if I go in the forces, I'll never see a shot, because obviously we ain't seen combat forever. Because when did you go in? You would have been in
87.
87. So yeah, as well as I do, nobody was doing nothing. So I went in 88. And so what I did is I contacted the French embassy in Washington, D.C. That was before the internet. I read like a book, but like an instructional book, like not like a fictional book, but just a documentary book about what they do and where to go. And so I bought a plane ticket, went to France. I went to the recruiting station. The French embassy in Washington, D.C. told me the address, so I didn't speak a lick of French. And then French 101 in that time period was quite brutal. So it would be like, how would we example? Okay, so you'd go you'd go phone, remote, glasses, right? 3 things. Let's just do that basic. So phone, remote, glasses. Then you go phone, remote, glasses, remote, phone, et cetera, et cetera. and then they go pick up the glasses, and then you pick up the phone, and that usually ended with a right cross across the face. So from that very simple example, you can probably understand the violence and that you would receive for mistakes. So you were basically, you paid a lot of attention. So, but I was barely 19 when I was by the time I finished basic. So I think the thing that helped me, that I was still quite young, so my mind was able to soak up the language. Now in the late 80s, there were a lot of Brits that were coming in, but they were all kickbacks from the Falkland War. Guys still looking for action, and then you would have whatever body else that was coming in. So a lot of those guys were quite older than me, so they struggled a lot with the language, where I was quite young, so I was able to pick it up. And then I made NCO, I made sergeant, with a little over 2.5 years of service, which was quite rare because most guys take about 5 years. But the thing was, I was able to understand the language, disseminate orders, give orders. I was fairly physically fit. And so, yeah, that's about basically how that went.
So tell me, the French Foreign Legion, that's not the French army, right? Or is it? Is it something different?
Okay, well, you still have, so the French Foreign Legion, they have one general, and he is over the Legion itself. Now, he, of course, takes orders from the French president and their French minister of their French minister of defense. Now, in that point in time, when I went in the late 80s, the French were still an army of peace, yet the French are very involved all over the world. They have colonies in Africa, or old colonies. They don't have colonies anymore, but at that point in time, but they have economic and political influence throughout the world and wherever they send their people. So if there's an uprising, or if there's a coup d'etat or something like that, they just drop the hat and they just send troops to get their people out. Now, so they are considered the French army, but at that point in time, French military was not allowed to go on military operations outside the borders. So they would use the Legion to do basically their stormtroopers. Like say, what we had, like what an example would be. So when I was in, my first conflict was 1988. 89. I had been in about a year. We were in the Indian Ocean, island chain called Comore. There'd been a guy named Bob Dinar who had came in, taken over an island. He had been there. He was an old mercenary from the Belgian Congo. He had set up a puppet government and a French protectorate, which is Mayotte, which is just an island next door. So he killed his puppet president, asked for help, and then we went in and then dealt with the problem. So there's little skirmishes like that, or like would be when where Rwanda went, there was French troops sent down there to evacuate, French citizens, or lots of little bitty bits of troops being sent left or right. One unknown fact about the French is obviously they're a nuclear power, but no one figures out where the hell they get the uranium from. So they get their weapons grade uranium from a place called Chad, which is in Central Africa. So anytime Central Africa or Chad flexes his muscles with whatever groups running through, they send troops and they take care of the problem. So it's not a lot of open conflict. I think when I was in, the only open conflict would have been the first Gulf War. And that was a coalition. And then before I got out, we did Cambodia and Yugoslavia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then the French were sending, so the Legion was also in Iraq, and they were also in Afghanistan recently. So, and then I think they are currently fighting in Western Africa, up by Burkina Faso. So yeah, they're fighting. They're still fighting. They're still quite active. And then they have troops that are stationed in French Guiana that are protect the Ariane, which is the European space launch.
So, like you're in a conflict in the French Foreign Legion. Were you pulling the trigger, shooting at bad guys, and ducking and running, worried about bullets and stuff?
You kidding, man? You're hoping you see combat because you get double or triple pay.
Oh, really? If you get into combat, you get way more money?
More and more money. So yeah,
shoot at me.
So we used to sit around. Well, I don't know. You remember what it was like in the 82nd? You would sit around, and so you would have went when you would have went. Were you in 82nd for the first Gulf War?
Yeah.
So you guys would have been sitting around on the tarmac praying to go to war, right?
Okay.
Right. So that's basically how we would. So you train, and so we would sit around. And when they would drop the hammer, you'd like, hell yeah, man, we're going to war. Except for the difference is if it was like just a conflict, we would double pay. If it was after war, we would triple pay. So you're always looking for, so you basically, you're ducking and moving and shooting and doing all the stupid stuff. But yes, most of our guys sit around and pray for war.
Right. It's a different culture, right? Like in the 82nd, it was 50-50, right? You had 50% of guys that were like warriors, like, yeah. But there was another 50% was like, hey, man, you can drop me off at the house. It'll be okay. I'm all right, you know?
It's like my son, Angus. So I've had two sons in the service. My oldest boy, Joseph, he was an intelligence analyst up in the Air Force. And I doubt very seriously he sat around and prayed for war. Angus, my boy, now he's stationed over at 173rd, but he's just a specialist. He's barely 2 years in. Now, I don't think he sits around and prays for war, but I imagine there's guys in 173rd that do sit around and pray for combat, right?
Yeah. So I was on the aircraft, one of the aircraft. I was on aircraft number 3 going to Haiti. There was a whole coalition. We're going to go jump in and do the whole thing. We turned around in mid-flight and went back to Pope. The coalition went down there, and the president agreed to leave and everything. But when we turned around and they made that announcement, half of the people on the aircraft were mad. They weren't going to get their little jump wings with the combat star and their combat patch. They were really mad. They weren't going to get to shoot nobody or nothing. But then the other 50% were like, yay, let me off this thing. I want to pee.
Well, the funny thing about it is I got my 82nd combat patch in the Foreign Legion.
Oh, you got to tell that.
So when I was in the Foreign Legion, I was with the 1st French Foreign Legion Cavalry Regiment. But so being that I was the only American in theater with the Legion, there was just two of us there with the Legion. There was me and a guy named Sean Haggerty. Now Haggerty was from South Carolina, and he was an old 19th Special Forces Group guy. So I think he was an 18 Delta. After that, he was a South Carolina state trooper, and then something happened when he was a state trooper and he left, and then he joined the Legion. So we were the only 2 Americans there, and we were both NCOs. So when I was with them, we were under the umbrella of 82nd when we crossed over into the Gulf. But when we crossed the border, 82nd followed us, and then we were still under their chain of command, because obviously everything falls under Schwarzkopf, and then Schwarzkopf sort of fills it down. And then for the Legion, our sector was under 82nd. So when I joined the U.S. Army years and years later, I put in for it, and I told them where I was, etc. And then I ended up getting on my freaking DD-214, or which my 201 file, I've got a freaking 82nd Airborne Combat Patch.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool, right? Come on.
So I was like the only guy in basic running around with a combat patch.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
That was quite funny.
Yeah, I bet. I couldn't imagine that, man. I bet a drill sergeant or 2 would lose their mind.
Well, it's funny because one of my first drill sergeants, I can't remember what his name was, Perina, doesn't matter. Anyways, he goes, you're reading off prior service guys. We had like Air Force guy, we had a Navy guy. And he goes, Ferguson. He goes, Foreign Legion. He goes, is that Peace Corps? I'm like, yeah, Peace Corps, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Now, when I was in the Legion, I was awarded the War Cross with a Bronze Star. Now, that is the second highest military honor an enlisted person can receive for the.
Oh, wow.
So it's just under, it'd be the equivalency under, because see, the old, like European armies, they're still draconian. So, for example, only officers could receive the Medal of Honor.
Okay.
And then after that, then it would be what's underneath it. That would be like NCOs and stuff. And the Legion was the same. So only basically officers would receive the Legion of Honor, or the Legion of Honor, which is like their would be like their Victoria Cross or the Medal of Honor. And then NCOs receive what's underneath that. So I got the War Cross, and then since the Americans were given the War Cross during World War II, I was authorized by 670-1 to wear my War Cross with my uniform.
No way.
So, but the funny thing was, I'm the last American to receive that medal since World War II.
Wow.
But the funny thing about it, no one quite figured it out until I was in AIT, and one of the command sergeant majors down at SIL, he's like, "What the fuck's that on your chest, Ferguson?" And then he went and pulled my file, and he's like, "Holy fuck!" So.
Oh, amazing!
So
yeah.
The thing is, obviously, you have a lot of guys that do reverse. So in the Legion, you get a lot of American veterans that come in, but they would have been U.S. service members first, and then they, once whatever they were delusioned, or they got out, or things happened, and then they start back over. Because I think when I was in from 88 to 93, I met maybe 10 Americans, but all 9 of them were all prior service U.S. service members.
Oh, wow.
Like we had an old guy in a regiment. He was a mechanic, but he was like from Nam. And then the different regiments, you do different training, so you meet. There's always some of us, but regardless, out of the 8,000 odd strong and only 10 Americans, so you can imagine how rare that would be. Even in my first regiment, we were 625, 630 guys, and only 2 Americans. And then later on, I changed regiments over to the infantry regiment, and 1,200 guys and just 2 Americans. So the Yanks within the ranks, Yanks is quite low, but they were all Southern boys. They were all from Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Texas.
Oh, that's great.
So
that's great. So did you find the transition from the French Foreign Legion into the U.S. Army easy? I imagine you would.
Discipline-wise, I found the discipline extremely low, because we were still like, so when I say they were draconian, so it would be like officers were, whatever came out of an officer's mouth was God. Whatever come out of like an NCO's mouth was from a demigod, and you never once questioned. And anything that was disciplinary was usually dealt with wall to wall.
Wow.
So, and then like, for example, something simple, like you show up for 1 second late after fall in the morning, that's 2 days in prison. And just, so it was not unusual to see a lot of beatings. Violence was very prominent. So when I was in basic training, I put down 2 other soldiers in basic training, because in my mind, I'm still to tell, I was all about rules, regulations. When you're given an order, you do it. And if you're not doing it, someone's going to smack you. So I laid hands on 2 guys when I was in basic training.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not because I had thought about it or had forethought, or the problem was I wasn't thinking. So some guy mouth off, and I'm like, motherfucker, sorry for cussing. I just like, what? And then smack him. Uh, you know, he's just,
Yeah, that's what's happening around you.
but that's how that, so the transition from that, it took me a little bit. So I had to put the brakes on, you know what I mean? Cause you're used to reacting some way. And then suddenly, obviously the Army's a little bit PC, and not quite as much as it was then. Uh, but obviously hands-on wall-to-wall counseling is not something you guys do.
Oh yeah, not as much anymore. If it's done, it's a special case and a special someone, you know. Um, so you were a
Yeah.
13 Fox in the U.S. Army, huh? That's a Ford Observer, right?
Yeah. So, but I was quite lucky. So I came in as a 13 Fox, and then I was assigned. So I was put on a Colt team, so a combat observation laser team. So those are brigade level, and my promotion was quite accelerated. Now we had. Do you remember when Clinton got caught with his hands in the cookie jar in the office? So Clinton got caught with his hands in Monica Lewinsky's panties, and then he did a what I call wag the dog. And if you remember, he sent a whole brigade of us up to Kuwait, up on the Iraqi border. Now, when I was in Colts, I was just a specialist. And then so the brigade command sergeant major came over and saw me, and he's like, Ferguson, he says, if we see combat, so your sergeant so and so, I don't have great confidence in him if things go sideways, whether or not he'll be able to make the right decisions. So he gave my sergeant a relief of cause, and then he pinned corporal stripes on me right there. Uh, so that was quite fast as far as my promotion. After that, of course, you get sergeant, you get staff sergeant, and then I got out on a medical. Uh, but the Army was, as a 13 Fox, was pretty good. Uh, you're a stepchild. You don't belong to anybody.
And that's kind of like air defenders. We were out there all alone and unafraid. You know, when you're a fister or a 13 Fox guy, yeah, you get jacked around a lot, right? You're like, oh, you're my new daddy. You're my new daddy.
So I was quite lucky because we were at brigade level. So our way it works for BRT. So you have 6 teams. Each team has 3 guys. There's only 18 of you. You have a brigade fire support officer, which is a major. He reports directly to the brigade commander. So there's no first sergeants, whatever else, trickling down, and platoon sergeants. We had a platoon sergeant with us, but he just ran one of the other teams, so he wasn't coordinating what we were doing. So, and then we had a brigade officer, so he was a warrant. So our brigade warrant was be like a W2, W3, and he was older than salty. We had an LT, but he was just beans and bullets, so he didn't really do too much. So anytime we had a briefing or a mission at the brigade, like you having like a brigade, so you have like a brigade talk. You come in for your op order. It's brigade commander telling you exactly what he wants, and then he'll look at you and say, "How deep can you get your guys? Can you get your eyes here? Can you get your eyes there?" And then like during OAR, you would be sitting there with the brigade, with the whole brigade. So it would be like all the battalion commanders and then their captains, but you'd have 18 dirty freaking Colts all sitting in the background, and he'd ask Captain so-and-so, what happened to your unit, or Colonel so-and-so, what happened to your unit? And then he'll go, all right, shut up. Tell me, Colts, what did you actually see? So it was at that level in the U.S. Army was pretty good because there was no bullshit. So, but if you're a normal fister and you're attached to a line unit, obviously you're a stepchild, and then you belong to whatever new first sergeant from whatever unit, and then nobody wants you, but everybody wants to use you.
Oh, that's for sure, right? You're well used. You're well used.
Well used. But I was quite lucky. So I was only on the line unit as a 13 Fox or a fister when I first arrived. And then after that, then I was put up for brigade. I was put up there at the brigade Colts. And then, but my entire career in the U.S. Army was always at brigade, because once you were there, you're just, all right, you're a Colt. So when you get reassigned, so like when I left when you do your PCS, they're going to automatically slot you into another Colt position for another Colt that's leaving. But obviously, the only problem is based on the task order for the whatever unit you're being sent to, and there's only 18 in the brigade, and there's only 6 NCOs in the brigade that are in that slot. Then your slots are quite rare, so you have to sit around and wait for your slot to open up so you can transition to wherever you want to go.
Yeah, I get that. Did you were a paratrooper, right? I see you sitting there with your, was that British shirt wings on right there, and the American airborne wings?
Yeah. Well, you do joint jumps, right? Just like Angus.
Oh yeah.
It's like Angus came home. Angus came home, who's my son. But he came home with 2 sets of foreign wings, little bastard, Moroccan and Italian.
Oh wow.
So.
Oh, anyway. That's great. Did you enjoy jumping out of airplanes?
Did you enjoy jumping out of airplanes?
Oh, I did. It was an interesting kind of thing, right? When I was at the MEP station signing up, the guy come out, or recruiter come out, and he was standing out there, and we were watching him. We're kids, and we were talking about what we were signing up for in the Army and stuff, and he snuffed out his cigarette. He said, "If you ain't airborne, you ain't shit." And he walked back inside, and we were both like, "Oh, let's go sign up for airborne," And so we really didn't even know what we were getting into, honestly. But I ended up spending my career, especially the first part of my career, jumping out of airplanes and teaching jump master school and writing manuals on how to jump and all of that stuff. That was where I spent a lot of my time. And so, although you don't see me like saying, "Hey, let's go jump out of airplanes," on Saturday, but back when I was doing it, buddy, I was all in it, man. I was in it to win it,
Well, the thing about a brigade as a Colt, you would sometimes have air assets. So sometimes you'd have a bird, but since everything's all dictated off whatever the brigade needs, so I would say 80% of the time it was air infiltration with a Black Hawk.
Oh, there you go.
So it was all about what you need, when you need it. Because, like, for example, if you're doing like an operation, so we would depart sometimes anywhere from 10 to 24 hours of the Fort of the Flood before anything ever happens, because you're inserting all your guys. So we'd either jump in, or usually it was a Black Hawk. We'd get dropped off somewhere, and then we'd have to hike in the rest of the way. The only thing that used to suck about that is that you're on a 3-man team, and then like you say, like, this is the Flood, and then you're going to insert 6 teams, and as the teams go, and then whatever you see and whatever you find dictates the brigade commander what the next action is going to be.
Right.
Now, the only problem used to suck about that is everything you needed, you carried on your back. So when you're operating within territory, you put like a cache, you drop your shit. But if you lost something or you broke something, you weren't going to get anything back from anybody else. So it used to kind of suck that way.
Yeah, look, being all alone and unrated out there in a little 2-man or 3-man team, that is rough. I totally get it.
So it used to suck. Some days it would just suck beyond belief, and then other days you could just do stupid things like I don't know, like would be an example. So you're on the brigade fob, all right? Now, the brigade fob is usually by a bunch of combat service support guys. So you're the only real grunts on the freaking fob. And it was always challenging to have my guys keep their private parts out of the girls that were on the fob. Or my guys were quite devious. So, it would not be unusual for my guys to build a still.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so my guys were making booze. One time they went up and they stole a big tarp off of a recovery vehicle, and then they commandeered like an excavator, and they dug themselves a pool, and they went over to the water treatment place, and they stole the pump, and the little bastards made a pool. So, and then, and since your only boss is the brigade commander, and the brigade command sergeant major, he's sweet on you. So you get to do a lot of stupid things.
Oh, that's great. That's great. What?
So some, like,
ever...
I give you a funny example. Like one time, you're doing maneuvers, and the brigade command sergeant major, he's like, so-and-so's in the field, so you're going. Off you go. So if anyone in the brigade went on maneuvers, you would go. Excuse me. So the brigade command sergeant major, he'd say, all right, he says, so-and-so, whatever battalion's in the field, I think they're kind of soft. So if you can sneak into their AO and steal some sensitive items, there's a 4-day pass for you. So
I would not be happy with that, sergeant major.
Anyway, so we used to do that shit all the time. So we would sneak into different units, sneak into their talks in the middle of the night. You got someone sitting around sleeping or whatever else, and you would take ANCDs, pluggers, weapons. The ANCDs was quite a big one because obviously that's not tied to anybody. So you know what an ANCD is, right? Yeah. So you take it, like this big, and that's the whole ComSec for their whole unit. So sometimes you'd feel sorry for them, and you'd like try to wake them up and shine lights in their face while you're in there stealing their shit, and they still wouldn't wake up. And you're like, fuck it, and you just take it. And then so we would take it all up brigade command sergeant up, take it up brigade, give it to sergeant major. He'd go, what unit you get it from? All right. He says, who'd you get it from? Or did you see a name? Or, and of course, I'll be flat. He'd just start running serial numbers. And he would call in their command sergeant major, and then shit rolling downhill. And of course, we always had 4-day passes out of this. So it was quite funny.
Oh yeah. I bet that made y'all popular.
It did. It was always the same thing, that when you're Op 4 and they know you're Op 4, they would be actively gunning for you.
Oh yeah.
Another funny thing would be, while you're laughing about it. So let's say you go out to NTC and your normal unit. So when you were in your unit, you'd have a comm officer come around and load up all your crap, right? Right. So when you're changing over your SINGARs, your times. So since we were our own element, we would carry our own ENCD. So we would have the ComSec for the entire brigade. So when it came time to switch your ComSec, you could just do it. And at that point in time, when they were just filling a new unit, did you have EPLARs in your unit? So you had EPLARs. EPLARs would have been fielded late 90s. If I remember correctly. So when we would go out in the field, we would turn our EPLARs on, and then it would tell us what units was in our AO. And of course, we're hiding up in the mountains looking down on them while they're all doing maneuvers. And then we would start scrolling through our ANCD, and then hooked it up to the EPLARs, and we would pull out a call sign, either their first sergeant, supply sergeant, or the chaplain. And we would get on their internal net. We'd use that call sign, and we'd call gas.
You get on their radio net and try to get them all in Mach 4.
And of course, the person that calls gas is the one that has to verify, right?
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
So we would sit up in the mountains and watch them, and they would all go crazy, masking up Mach 4, and they'd be calling on their internal net, trying to find out this guy to freaking go ahead and do a test. So obviously when you're bored, you get bored.
Yeah.
Sometimes we would get around and we would screw with their battalion commanders. So he'd be on the radio being all authoritative. This is 6 actual. We go 6 actual. F you, man.
Oh my God.
And then he would go something funny. He'd go, do you know who this is? We like, yeah, but you don't know who this is.
Oh, that's funny.
So the problem with that guy, that being a Colt at brigade level, you got a lot of spare time on your hands. So
and a lot of access to radio nets.
So idle hands and the devil, right?
Amen. Amen. Amen.
So,
So did you where did you deploy with the US Army?
U.S. Army was, well, my first deployment was Kuwait in '98. That was when Clinton got caught with his naughties. That was quite good. And then '02, I was medicaled out. So I was medicaled out. So that was, and then after that, I went to work because I moved back to France. At that point in time, I had a French wife, and then I went to work for a French company that was ran by ex-Legion guys and French military. And then I did police training for GIGN. So we there was a big shoot house, and we did their training. And then would have been '03 to '05, I went to work for Discovery Military Channel as a military advisor.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Tell me about that.
And so the first show I did a show with Bear Grylls called Escape the Legion. So pre-production, post-production, I did quite a lot of work for him. So we went and filmed military reality shows down in Northern Africa, things like that. Then I went to work, came back across, got a divorce from my first wife. I went to work for Blackwater back in '06. And then, you do any normal stuff, Department of State contracts, Afghanistan, Iraq. And then I changed companies, and then I did a contract for Triple Canopy. Then I did a contract for Armor Group. And then I did QRF for the U.S. Embassy in Kabul. Now, when I started working for the State Department, my main sense, obviously for close protection guys or for VIPs and stuff, they have like the three guys. They have the guys in suits. That's like there would be bodyguards and things like that. That'd be your close protection CPs. You'd have your advanced guys. That'd be like your snipers, your guys that do route reconnaissance, things like that. And then it would be your counter assault teams, and that's just trigger pullers. So that's what I ended up doing for the State Department. I was CAT counter assault team. And then I went to work directly for the State Department, and then I was shipped out to northern Iraq, and then we trained up the Kurdish Prime Minister's, which is one of our allies. We trained up his close protection detail, started it from zero, and then worked it all out. That was on a pretty good detail. That was so our main guy, he was a former CAG guy that was gone way off the reservations. I'm not going to mention any names, but he was way. You ever met those guys that were CAG? Probably when you're on brag and they're CAG, but they just don't look like CAG. Anyways, he'd been so far off the reservation, he'd gone native, I don't know how many times. And then it was another guy. He was a Secret Service agent, counter assault team on the Clinton administration. We had a 18 series with us in the SEAL. So that was our training team. And then obviously me and the Army and the Foreign Legion. So we trained up all their guys. Then I did that for a number of years. And then I went to work for DOD. And out of AFRICOM. And then that was like military advisory stuff. So we were going training foreign troops on like mobile training teams, and everybody was either out or had just gotten out. So you're still under DOD orders. Sometimes if you were training foreign troops, you had to have a rank based on who you're training, whether or not they would respect you or not. So, it just gets quite complex, but so we did Iraq, we did Afghanistan, we did training troops all over Africa. So it's in a gray area once you start getting in that little niche. Cause it's obviously like when you were selling body armor for the law enforcement guys, there's like a gray area. I imagine that you've crossed path with guys that were in between somewhere working, right? So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah. That's that's an amazing thing, journey to go and train all those folks. Did you have a time where you were particularly concerned about where you were and who you were training and what was going on?
uh, well, let's like, for example, we're down in Burundi. Now we were doing support operations for AMISOM, that's the African mission in Somalia. Now we were training up. Now, when I was training troops for AMISOM, we were training troops in Nigeria. We were training troops in Burundi, and there's a bunch of other places that we went. Now, Al Shabaab knew who these troops were being trained. Because, so, like, for example, you take different African countries, you're training the troops, but everything has to be standardized so they can coordinate and work and things like that. So it was very common for AMISOM to come out to our places where we were sleeping, or we were eating or dining or chasing women or training, and they would actively do data collection on us. And then there would be instances where they would be like blowing up restaurants where we ate at. They would try to attack the hotels we were sleeping in. But everyone is still pretty much switched on. So you're really not worried about it. If things went downhill, you have arms accessible. You have troops that are guarding you. So like your basic security or whatever installation you're on, but they're guys that you might have trained personally, would have been, like a year ago or 2 years ago or whatever. Because when you would send like a mobile training team, let's say like you're 10 to 12 guys and you train a battalion size element, anything from collective tasks to personal tasks, everything from checkpoint operations to base operations to food distribution points to convoy operations, searching, whatever else. So you have a lot of confidence, and in a lot of these third world countries, when you're training foreign troops, they appreciate the knowledge that you give them. So therefore, you're an asset to them, and so they're not going to let anything happen to you. Amen. So you're not worried about your own troops that you train and try to get you.
Yeah, I get it.
So, because knowledge is power in a lot of places, like, for example, like African regimes, when they change, the first thing they do is they kill everyone from the former regime. And then they kill all their families and kill anyone that was educated by them. Then they replace them by people that are loyal to them. That's just how things work. So right. Over the years of training foreign troops for the government, pretty simple. When I was up in northern Iraq, we were embedded with our troops in our classes. So we would train guys like a 66 man team or a platoon size element. We would train them anywhere from 6 months out to a year, just running drills. Now, by the time these guys get to us, these guys have anywhere from 8 to 10 years of service. Most of them are all highly skilled, but obviously you're taking them to the next level. And they will protect you with their lives. Now, but the bad guys also know that you're training troops, and so they do send out teams or collecting intel on you, and they do try to get you. We had a terp. We had, you have translators and you have interpreters. Translators is the guy that's been in the military. He understands the terminology. Everything you say, he translates exactly how it's supposed to be. An interpreter would be a guy who's never been in the service, and you say light him up or hit them or whatever else. He might not understand the terminology of light them up. He'll say, oh, okay, light their cigarette, Or, so all of our guys that we worked with were highly skilled, and they knew what they were talking about. So they were an asset as well. But the bad guys also go after them because they're trying to remove whatever you're facilitating, transferring information. Like ITARs. ITARs is also not only just equipment, but it's also what's inside your mind that you're able to transfer over to someone. Now, For example, me and my buddy Mike, Mike and I would go out to restaurants every night. We would leave the compound, we'd get a vehicle, we'd never drive the same place twice, we'd never take the same route twice, we'd always go somewhere out in town because we weren't afraid. But the other two guys in our team, they started developing a pattern. So every one day a week, they would go to the same pizza joint in the same Christian sector, and they developed a pattern. And then that particular day, they didn't go, but one of our other guys went with two other white guys. And the first thing that happened was someone jumped out of their vehicle in front of the place when their vehicle pulled up, even though they didn't get out of it, but they just saw two white guys in a terp. And lit them up with AK. Our translator took one in the chest, one in the throat, one in the leg, two white guys down. And then they doubled on, and then they put an RPG to the front of the bar.
Oh boy.
So that transition, so like, for example, when you're in the service doing those types of things, you have plenty of backup, plus you're not out in town enjoying the local flavors.
Right.
But when you're off the reservation doing these things, the only backup you got is what you got.
Right.
So
You gotta fight your way out of it.
It was very common on a lot of occasions that the bad guys from whatever neighboring faction didn't want us working would actively come out and try to remove us.
Amen. Yeah.
So it gets
that's crazy times, man.
It's all right. It's like, for example, I tried to retire. Now the problem with some of this stuff is once you're in, you can get out. You can, I'm done. But sometimes the client or whatever government you're working with doesn't want extra bodies in, because whether they are dealing with they're dealing with loyalty, or they only deal with people they know, and everyone in their detail, they're all interrelated, they're all cousins or nephews, they're all from the same tribe, they're same loyalty, and that goes far for them. Now, I retired and had finished up, would have been just before I moved to Scotland, so 7 years ago. And then 2 years after I arrived, I get a call from my former boss and says they want you back in Iraq. So, and they're not going to take another body because they only want to take who they know. So before I know it, I'm back on a plane and I'm back on the Prime Minister's compound, training up the next generation of guys that are training up for the counter assault teams for the head of state detail, but they're all related to the guys I had trained like 10 or 15 years prior. So these will be like their nephews or their sons, or so sometimes the lines on which you work for our government are extremely blurred.
Right. I get that. So, they say that there's no atheist in foxholes. Was there a time when you found a particular kind of faith or something that you that kept you going?
Funny you should ask. Now, I was raised in the Deep South by my daddy. My daddy's a Methodist, and my stepmom was a Mormon. So now, being where I've gone and where I've been pretty good. Now, when I was in the Legion, they would make me go to church on Sundays, like mandatory, like old world. But since France is Catholic, it was always a Catholic church I went to. Of course, I wasn't Catholic. Now, years later, I've always had an affinity for the Catholics. So sometimes if I go confess my sins, I'll just go confess it to a Catholic priest, even though I'm not Catholic, because I know all the words. Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. It's been X amount since I've... And he's like, all right, my son, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm good. I'm absolved. I got a buddy of mine who is in the Canadian Army, and he is up in Quebec City. Now, the head for the Catholic Church on the North American continent is up in Quebec City. So there's a guy named Cyprian something. Anyways, and I know he's on the list to be the Pope. I was up there one time and I went into his chapel, and instead of speaking French, I spoke English, and I asked to see Holy Father. So the priest went upstairs in this big headquarters and went and got this guy, which he's like the head of the Catholic Church for the North American continent. This guy come and got he went and took my sins. Now, unbeknownst to him, earlier that day, I had been drinking with my buddy out in town, and I had snuck in this Crusader sword in my jacket because it was raining like hell. And I snuck in. I went to the church with the desire to have this sword blessed by a priest. Strangely enough, the priest knew the blessing to bless the sword. After that, now working for the government, I always travel with my own sighting, like my own sights. So my own ACOG, your everything that you work with. So I told him about it, and then I made a meeting with him afterwards. So I've had this guy bless my stuff. So he's quite funny. So I don't think taking your firing pins. Oh, so I took my firing pins for my guns, for my work guns. And I've had him bless the firing pins, obviously, because you can't cross international borders with weapons. Have him bless the weapons. But you can't ask a Baptist priest or a Methodist pastor to bless your weapons parts.
Oh, right. Wow. That's amazing.
So no, I've never found religion or suddenly found the idea to find baby Jesus, or, I've never been so fearful for my life. So I've never found religion in a foxhole. Obviously, growing up in the South, religion is just who you are. But, back down in the South, if you were raised like I was, it was fire and brimstone, right?
Amen to that. Right. It's not a very appealing vision many times.
No. So, for example, Angus. So my children from my first marriage, my first wife was French, and only 3 of them were born stateside, because I have 8 children. So Joseph, Jessica, and Emily were all born in the States. Elizabeth, Angus, Sarah, Thor, and then Everett were all born overseas. Angus and Elizabeth were born in Germany, and then Sarah and Thor were born in France, and then Everett's been born in Scotland. Now, Angus, my boy, who's now 20, well, he's not a boy, he's a man. Now, he was raised overseas on military installations and government installations. And then when he's been educated completely overseas, gone to church over here. So he's gone to Church of Scotland, which is quite liberal. And, it's all about acceptance and love. And it's the new way of, however they're doing it. Now, Angus went back to the States for basic, who had never been in the States before. And so during Christmas Exodus, he's at my daddy's house up in Cobb County. And I'm saying, like, all right, when you go see my daddy, be aware, he's not the benevolent God. He's Old Testament. Right? So,
right.
So it was quite funny, just to put in perspective, like my grandmother Ferguson, she was Old Testament. So my 2 sisters, Vicky and Dawn, they were raised by Cheryl. And Vicky and Dawn, their first children were born out of wedlock. So Dawn had 2 and Vicky had 1. And to put it in perspective of how things worked in my household, now my granny Ferguson, she was Old Testament. So she would have been like one of those old ladies that, would have been from Gone with the Wind. And when you talked to her, she had a dip of chaw in her mouth, and a spittoon. And she was like fire and brimstone. So when my sister Vicky used to come over our house, she would go, "Your sister was here with her bastards." So yeah. So that was always, so that is the mentality in which my father's side of the family still is, you know. So my sisters were person non grata because they had children out of wedlock.
Oh wow.
Whereas not everyone in the States is quite like that, but you know, they were, you know, I just put it in the, you know, my family was old South.
Oh yeah. I totally get it. We got to change the subject just a little bit. Okay. So
All right.
shit's hit the fan and you got to roll out and it's in your neighborhood. What are you taking with you? Tell me about the weapons you're going to walk out of your house with, you know, right now.
In the States or in Scotland?
No, let's do Scotland or in the States. In the States.
Well, I've got my go-to gun. So I own so over the years of combat, over 20 something years in uniform and multiple conflicts, you start to learn that certain rounds don't go through everything. So when I was looking for my own weapon, so when I went to work for Department of State, I could either take an issue weapon or I could take my own. So I went with a weapon system called the DSA SA-58, which is based off the old FAL system, so 7.62. So my go-to weapon is this big beastie of a weapon. So 7.62 by 51. Now DSA has changed the way their weapons work. So they've got like a piston driven. You can pop rounds through it all day long and it don't hurt you. So that, and since I have worked so many years with the Glock platform, even though I hate it, my gross motor skills and my fine motor skills are two different things. So like if I take a pistol and if I pull my Glock out, all I gotta do is pull it and whatever I'm looking at, that's what I hit. The only problem is my gross motor skills are fine tuned to that weapon. So if I switch out to one of the other guns I like, so I have a Kimber Tactical Entry 2, but if I pull it out of my holster and I shoot, since the angle of the pistol grip is slightly different from that of the Glock, I've got to lower my sights and concentrate. So I'll probably just grab a Glock 23 and a DSA.
There you go. Good. That's it. You know, I don't get to talk to people that geek out on that so much.
No, you know, cool. I just, cool, it's my, it's like, for example, like there's guys that we know, and they will talk to you about the ballistics. They will talk to you about the specifics and the design and this and that. And then I'm to the old way is how efficient is it and how easy is it to use and reliable.
Amen. And you just explained that with the Glock. That's so cool. Yeah.
You go with what you know, right?
Yeah, you go with what you know. Okay, here's another question for you. Was there a particular, like a hazing or a particular something as part of the French Foreign Legion that you had to go through? Is there something like that?
I'll give you a story on the Legion, the brutality of it. Now, I was a good soldier and I was physically fit and I was able to understand what's going on and I kept my mouth shut. When it came time to get smacked, I took my smack. When it came to get punched, I took my punch. When it came time to get kicked, and I just drove on. You make a mistake, you take the beating and you move on. Now, when I was in basic training, we had this young Canadian kid. Now, according to him, he was a Canadian paratrooper before the Legion. Now, the Legion is when you meet guys, everybody was something before. They were all a fighter pilot or they were something. But in general, they're just nobodies. Now, this kid had a problem with the brutality. So one night he went in the bathroom and he slit his wrists. Now, every time they call formation, they'd make you line up and then they would count you like 1, 2, 3, 4, and they'd make you go down. They, like 1, 2, 3. And then, of course, you're trying to count. You have to count the drill sergeant's not counting. And then if you miss the count, then he'll beat you and say whatever. Say you're like supposed to be 15. You say 14. He hits you. You say you'll go 15. You go 15, and then all that. And then you go on. So they pulled a whole platoon up. There's like 36 of us, and then there was 35. Now I must have been somewhere around 20 in line. And there's a bunch of screaming and yelling. You're all lined up in the hallway. And then there's a guy that goes in the bathroom. Now, you don't know why you're there. All you know is you've been called in and they've been beating you up and down the hallway and screaming at you. I think I was somewhere around 20, 21. Anyways, it comes my turn to go in. Now, each guy was in the bathroom, was probably in there from anywhere from 45 seconds to maybe 2 minutes. There's a lot of screaming going on because it was a while for me to move down the line. Now I get down there and there's blood all over the floor. Now, old boy, he wasn't moving. So the drill sergeant's kicking him, his limp body, slit wrist. Drill sergeant's kicking him. He's yelling at him, yelling at you, telling that he's not a liability, or he's a liability. He's not an asset. He was weak and he deserves to die. And then they just keep doing it. So I would imagine when they found him, he might have still been alive, because I talked to a couple of guys like the first 10. They're like, yeah, man, he was still moving. So if you can understand that level of hazing and just pure determination on will and not caring for all they care about is the end product of training you and you being to where you need to be. Now, if they don't deem you necessary, you're not there.
Wow.
I remember we had a couple guys, you probably same thing when you were in training, or you've had troops that had a problem with cleanliness. I remember we had a couple guys in our platoons that were not very clean, and they would line them up in the hallway and make the entire platoon go past them and beat them one by one. Beat the same, like the one guy who's like, during inspection found something dirty in his locker or whatever else. So they would have the whole platoon come down one by one and give him a punch in the face or in the groin or in the ribs or
a code red in the middle of the day organized by the platoon sergeant.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've seen guys throwing out 4-story windows on a regular basis.
I've seen folks thrown out of a 2-story window in a wall locker before.
They had these little wall lockers, and they had the guys that would put them in and just shove him out in a 4-story window, and then they would go down and bring the locker back upstairs and throw it out again.
We did it, but it was the 2nd story, not the 4th.
So the brutality and the hazing was quite brutal. But if you can understand how it works, I don't know, it's like simple stuff. Like when you're a young guy in regiment and you're a young private, when you go in, you go to all the offices, you go to first sergeant, you go to platoon sergeant, you go to the commander, you go to the XO, you go to supply sergeant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You told where your room is, and at the end of the day, then you go to your room. But before you go to your room, you have to go down to the PX or the shopette. You buy a case of beer because you're 6-man rooms. You walk in, you put the case of beer down, and you go wait out in the hallway until your guys in your room tell you it's okay to come in.
Oh, that's cool. They get what they wanted, the beer, huh?
So you're paying your tax.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Now, when I came in, there was 3 of us out of my training that went to that regiment, and then we went to the first company. And then I understood, and I brought my case of beer, set it down, went out in the hallway. Now, one of the other boys that was with me, he brought the case of beer in and sat down and had a drink. They took him out in the hallway, beat him stupid, senseless, and then threw him out the window unconscious.
No way. That's rough, man.
So sometimes the brutality was, well, it is what it is, but so that level of, so coming from that level of brutality. So for example, when I was NCO in the Legion, I never had to put my hands on anybody. if there was a problem, the guys in the platoon would put their hands on him. Like someone talked back to you, like a new guy come into your unit, and he's freaking he's telling him to do something, and he's got a little bit of swagger in him, and he doesn't want quite to do what he's supposed to do, which is very rare, because most guys, once they finish training, you can tell they've been brainwashed because they have like 1,000-yard stare. Well, just for perspective, when I finished basic training and arrived in regiment, I didn't speak unless I was spoken to for the first year.
Oh yeah, I bet.
It's because that's just how you work.
Yeah.
But you have I over the years, I had a couple new guys come out of training, and they would be in my platoon, and you're giving them whatever task, and they would say something, or they might say something, you don't know it, and then before you know it, there's a smack and the guy's on the ground, but the guys in your platoon have dealt with it.
Oh wow.
So.
Oh wow. What would you say your rank is when you were a staff sergeant, a sergeant first class when you got out?
Staff sergeant.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Obviously, your medical issues aren't affecting that much of your deployability and stuff.
That was the big problem. So I on a jump, I came in. There was an object in the DZ on a night jump. I don't know what the hell it was. Good crosswind, and I took a side impact on my right foot.
Ouch.
And it shattered every single bone from my big toe all the way over to my little toe. Shattered them. Now that is not something they can just put back together. So they gave me the option of amputating or surgeries. So I ended up getting 4 surgeries over a 2-year period, like fill it full of hardware, remove the hardware, break it, set it again, move it, break it, remove tendons, remove nerves. So being a 13 Fox, you have to have ones. So I ended up suddenly with a 3 or a 4. I can't remember, but it was bad. So I ended up getting out with 80%.
Oh wow. Well, thanks for your service like that. It's there are so many people that come in and get hurt while they're in the middle of training or some things, and it's almost like you get pushed to the wayside. It's like you're out there flapping. You're like, I got broke because of that jump you put me on, and now I can no longer do my job. It's kind of rough, right?
Yeah, well, I had when they offered me amputate, so when they offered to say they might have to amputate, I says, well, can you take the other one? And he goes, why? I says, if you take both of them, I can get freaking magic legs and I can be taller.
Oh yeah, it wants to be taller. That's great.
So they're like
6 foot tall.
So they're like, no, man, we can't take both of them.
Oh my gosh, that's
so.
great.
But the thing was, so since I had all the work done, so post surgery, now with the VA's been good with me. Now since I've gotten out, I've had to have 6 additional surgeries on the foot. VA's perfect. They've never had an issue with it. If something happens, they go in, they fix it, and then whatever else.
That's great.
So, but working for DOS, you've got to do your 2-mile run. You got to do your 2 minutes of push-ups. You've got to lift your 180-pound dummy, and you've got to do all these different type of tests. So physically, that's been no problem. Obviously, when you're in the Army, you have to carry 100 odd plus pounds and still perform everything else. Now I do walk with a limp, but that's just time and still more abuse that I put my body through over the years, but it hasn't hindered me from still doing other jobs for the government. Obviously, you can't jump out of birds no more.
Right.
It's like what Angus, like for example, Angus and I were talking the other day. Now, when you jump, you probably had the T10s, right?
Yep.
So now they're to the T11s.
Yep.
So, because when I was jumping, we had the T10 Charlies, and now Angus is on the T11s. But the other day, Angus did a Hollywood jump with the Italians wearing the T10s, And he says, my God, he says, there's like freaking 50-pound difference between the two damn chutes. Right. So
Yeah.
he's like, I can breathe, I can move.
Yeah.
So I don't want to even think about what them young troops are jumping with no more.
Amen. Yeah. And actually the parachutes got a little safer, but they definitely got heavier for sure. Definitely got heavier.
I don't know, man. I always thought when we were coming down, because I was so light and had a lot of upper body strength, before I would come to the ground, I would just give my risers a good yank, and then of course my freaking parachute would whoosh, and I could almost stop before I got to the ground. But I don't know, man. Angus was telling me about these jumps, these T11s. I'm like, man, that's gotta fucking suck.
Oh yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I would prefer to jump the T11. I like the new one. I agree. It's got more reliable, all those things, but it's a different thing, different thing.
Yeah, because I never had to jump with the T11, so they brought those things after I was done.
Yeah. Well, Glenn, it's been a great thing to talk to you. I have enjoyed it. Is there something that maybe we haven't touched on that we need to touch on? Is, this is made really, I would hope, for your grandkids, right? I would hope that your grandkids one day can look at this and say, that's my grandpa right there. He was in the Foreign Legion. He was a paratrooper.
Well,
here's some of his
funny
stories.
thing about it,
That's kind of the goal of all of this.
No, I'm not really worried about it. See, the thing is, I had my fame on television a while back.
Oh, really? Tell me about that.
No, so when I was working for Discovery Military Channel, I was actually on the TV.
Oh, cool.
So usually if my kids watch it, they're like, my God, Dad, you're an asshole.
Oh, no.
But that's all right. I don't care. So when I was working, obviously when I was in Legion, before I got out of Legion, I was a drill sergeant.
Okay.
So my guys used to do whatever they would do, and they would just do it. And then as an NCO in the U.S. Army, I was pretty good. I never really abused my troops, but if you screwed up, I made sure that you paid for it. So if you made me mad and you were not doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, you were supposed to be. My remedial training was pretty intense. So
I bet.
Now, when I work for Discovery Military Channel, doing the shows, I was a drill sergeant from the Foreign Legion on television for this reality show. So really? I would smoke these guys up and down hills and through the desert. So I would lose guys to like double hernias, retracted testicles, and broken ankles.
Brutal.
So yeah. So, but the thing is, that's all televised. You can just watch it.
Oh wow! I gotta check that out.
I'll send you the links, but I'll send you some of the links, but it's quite funny.
Yeah. Send me the links. I can't wait. I will definitely check that out. I'll be your biggest fan, man.
So, but when I went to work for the State Department, and as you go up in position, your GS level goes up. So you go from training to doing, you like being a company element training and et cetera, et cetera. And then towards the end, I'm responsible for battalions. So you're training up battalion size elements. The only problem with that is all the deviousness and evilness in my head is still being filtered down, but now to battalion level.
Oh no.
So yeah, it's quite funny.
Oh my gosh.
But you I don't know. But you can get away with just about anything. It's like, for example, I'll tell you a funny story and we'll end. So we were at training some troops, and I had some guys doing an obstacle course, a raised obstacle course. And then one of the guys was afraid to go across. And I'm like, you need to go. Everyone's waiting on you. And the guy's like, no, man, if I fall, I'll die. So I jumped up there and walked across the obstacle, and I jumped off. It was only about 20 feet, and then I'm like, now you go. And he's like, no, I'm afraid. So I called down to the end of the line, and I'm like, so-and-so is blocking up the obstacle. We're not getting the troops through. And then so my hire says, well, what do you want to do? And I says, well, I can always just shoot him off of it. So, and I looked at my guy, the guy that was with me, the Turk, and he says, Commander Ferguson is going to shoot you if you don't move forward.
Oh no.
And he's like, shoot me. He says, kill me. And I says, no, man. I says, I figure I could do your leg and you'll just fall. Now, of course, I'm dead serious.
Right. Did he scurry on across there?
Oh, he scurried across.
Oh, I bet he did, right? Especially when you pulled the pistol out.
Well, I didn't even have to. I just put my hand on the guard, and I was like, all right, man, well, I got to get you.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. That's great, man. That's great.
But think about having that much power to do what you want, and the authoritativeness of what you want to happen with no restrictions.
Yeah. Wow.
It can be kind of funny.
Oh, I bet.
Like years ago, I was down in South Sudan, and I went in to go get some business cards made at this printing place because I was the country security manager for a major company, and we're meeting with we're upgrading their infrastructure, and I have all these assets. I have about 40 odd engineers, and they're upgrading cell phone towers, and you got all these different pieces, and there's millions of dollars are from this company every single year and every single month that's pouring in. So like, for example, my office, we would probably move like $4 million a month out of our office to pay employees and stuff. Now, I wasn't the pay guy, but I'm aware of the money that was coming in, and I would have a security detail that would cover the convoy and moving the money, moving parts, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you're in a country that is quite volatile, but you're still working with them. And then so our company would use the police officers as their local police officers as our security force, because if there was a problem, then that could be dealt with. And then there would be no problems if our security personnel had to take care of somebody, either life or death. Now, we went to this printing company, and I'm meeting with people like major heads of states. I'm meeting with ambassadors, things like that. And the new guy's out, I'm the new guy in, you're meeting. Anyways, so we went to a printing place for business cards. Now, my number two is a member of their military, so he's a major. And whatever I say translates to him, and then he makes it happen. So we're using their military assets, their police assets for all our work for security for our guys. Now, something funny is so we went to a printing place to get business cards made, and then the guy's like, oh, he gives us the cards, they're wrong. Like, well, you got to fix this. Well, I've got a meeting with so-and-so, so I need some type of documentation, because I was going to ask you for your number. So anyways, it went on for about 3 times, and I was jokingly, and I said to the guy, says, if you don't get this right by tomorrow, I'm going to have my guy. And I says, I'm going to have him take you down to the Nile and feed you the crocodiles. Jokingly. Now, this was on a Friday. And then Monday morning, I come in, my man's got the business cards. Now, he was supposed to have the business cards ready on Saturday. And he's the cards. He says, "Oh man, they look good." He says, "Yeah." He says, the design's a little different." He says, "Well, I had to go to a different guy." I'm like, "All right." I says, "Well, how'd that go?" He says, "Oh," he says, "It went straight off." I says, "I went to him Saturday. He had them ready by Sunday." I said, "Well, why weren't the other ones ready?" He says, "Well, that guy ain't around no more."
Oh no! What, he skipped town, or they buried him with the crocodiles?
He actually fed him to the crocodiles.
Oh no! Hey, but he accomplished the mission, I guess, for Monday.
No, that little fearfulness that the little word got out that so and so got fed to crocodiles.
Oh my gosh! Oh wow!
So sometimes you got to be sometimes you got to be very careful uh, when you say something,
Oh wow, yeah, yeah.
even in jest.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So, hey, let's close us out here. Why don't you I would love it as kind of a tradition if you would think about maybe calling your unit to attention and then saluting and signing out. Could you imagine doing that? You probably hadn't called anybody to attention in a few days.
Well, I tried with my 2-year-old, but he ain't working too well.
Yeah, he doesn't. He hasn't been through basic yet.
He's well, I've been working on him since he was born.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking. I was hoping I could get you maybe even to call it, think about calling the unit in French or something. I don't know.
Oh,
I
you're
thought that
so
would be
damn
cool.
funny. You're funny. Is this what you do? Is this is this what you do at nighttime in your underpants?
Yeah, exactly right. I practice my French calling people to attention. Yeah.
Well, you would say something like you go ensemble, which would be like everyone attention, and then you go gardez-vous, which was attention.
Oh, cool.
And then and since the French are a bunch of bastards who've lost many a war, they salute with their palms up.
Oh, isn't that cool? I can't. That would be a weird kind of
Well, the Brits do it too,
movement, I think. Yeah, 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 yeah.
thanks to us.
Right. That's great. That's great.
So for example, like because I do a lot of, so we have here in Glasgow and Edinburgh, we have 15 para, and then we have another para regiment. I think it's 3 para that's here, and so we go to a bunch of their organizations and their dinners, and it's funny because all them bastards show me palms up. When I salute them, I always go palms down, right?
There you go. I love it.
And I'm like, they do it, and I'm like, thank you for showing me that you have no weapons, that you've been defeated by my ancestors.
Oh wow, I love
You
it.
at least got to have fun with it, right?
Amen. Yeah,
So how are you doing?
dude, I'm
So
great, man. I feel blessed. This project we've been doing here for a few years is kind of getting to a point where it's taken off. We've got the coins and the boxes and the thumb drives, and I've got over 100 interviews now on tape. I got another 130 something that are signed up to do it, and it's just a chance for us to tell our stories, while we're still able to. So many of our generation, Glenn, are getting sick and getting hurt, and cancer and tumors and all kinds of
we're
stuff.
old, man. We're old now.
I know, right? We're old.
So like, for example, something funny. So most of my soldiers, when I was in the U.S. Army, they're all still in. So most of my guys that were my personal soldiers, they're all still in, but they're now command sergeant majors. They're either battalion, brigade command sergeant majors, or the first sergeants. And then most of my officers that are in, they're either battalion. So the young lieutenants, they're either full birds or they're 1-stars. And a lot of my officers are still in. So, like, for example, one of my first battalion commander, he's a 1-star up at Texas A&M, and then a bunch of other ones. So I've had a couple of my old enlisted soldiers that work for me. They've been commissioned. So I've got a major and I got 2 captains. Are you listening? Cutting out.
Yeah,
So
I got disconnected and now it's reconnected. I'm glad something's
okay.
happened.
So what I was saying was, so like a lot of my old soldiers that used to work for me personally, they're still in. But now they're like command sergeant majors, either brigade or battalion. A couple of them are first sergeants. A couple of them ended up getting commissioned. So I've got a couple of my soldiers that are now lieutenants, or not lieutenants, but they're either captains or the majors. And you're talking about the coins. And now my old soldiers that are command sergeant majors, they've been sending me coins.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Is that not cool? So I get coins from my
Yeah,
old
it is big
soldiers.
time cool. Yeah.
I get coins from my old soldiers that are now command sergeant majors, and they still think old Ferguson is sending me coins. So that's quite cool.
Yeah.
So anyway,
That's cool. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
yeah, it's always good when old guys like us. I imagine probably a lot of your soldiers are still in too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
What were you saying? What were you saying, Will? Keep getting cut off. I think we're out.
Marshall in the middle.